listening to Supply Chain Now Trends with Chris Barnes. Today we're talking about cloud computing and supply chain applications. Hey everybody, welcome to Supply Chain Now Trends. This episode is brought to you by Supply Chain Now Radio. SCNR's mission is to bring leaders and practitioners together to share best practices and discuss the key challenges impacting supply chain management today. Check out supplychainnowradio.com for more information and show notes. 100 years ago, companies stopped producing their own power with steam engines and plugged into the newly built electric grid. The cheap power pumped out by electric utilities not only changed how businesses operated, but also brought the modern world into existence. Today, a similar revolution is underway. Companies are dismantling their private computer systems and tapping into rich services delivered over the internet. This time, it's computing that's turning into a utility. The shift is already remaking the computer industry, bringing new competitors like Google and Amazon to the fore, and threatening traditional stalwarts like Microsoft and Dell. But the effects will reach much further. Cheap computing will ultimately change society as profoundly as cheap electricity did. The book The Big Switch by Nicholas Carr provides a good comparison of electrification and the industrial era to cloud computing and the information era. This book is divided into two parts. The first uses historical analysis to build the idea the internet is following the same development path as electric power did 100 years ago. The second section discusses the economic, social, and other issues associated with the internet becoming the platform and marketplace for commerce. Companies have always used technology. The question was, what type of technology and how was it used? To understand the business applications of cloud computing and the potential future, look back to the 1850s and the introduction of Burden's wheel, the most powerful vertical water wheel in history. Back then, business owners knew if you were going to be in business, you also had to produce your own power to remain competitive. There was no need to be in business if you could not harness energy to help become more productive. What is unique about Henry Burden is he realized if he could do a better job at generating power, he could gain a competitive advantage. So he invented the Burden wheel to power his factory. The Burden wheel was arguably the most singular and spectacular feature of an era abounding with significant technological innovation. The invention and use of the giant Burden wheel made his company a market leader for many decades. However, by 1920, this once dominant and strategic asset could be seen rusting in the field. What happened? Did his company go out of business? No. There was a fundamental change in the assumption of how to produce power. Around this time, George Westinghouse created the first centralized alternating power plant for mass consumption, designed after the Tesla power generating plants. All of a sudden, the fundamental assumption about business was changing. No longer did a business owner need to invest large amounts of capital to buy or build a dedicated power generation station. Centralized alternating power introduced a more efficient model to acquire power. Centralized production of alternating power over a distributed network was a disruptive technology that changed the world. In 1900, this leap from self-generated power to a distributed mass consumption network was risky. Businesses had significant investment in not only the wheels, but the apparatus to distribute the power throughout the plants. These were the ERP systems of the time. Most companies had proprietary distribution systems to power their plants. Also, there was a big investment in a large staff to support the power grid infrastructure. Think about it. Companies had to not only hire the expertise to design and run the power distribution network, they had to select the right type of hardware, make sure it was large enough to meet maximum demand cycles, and ensure connectivity and uptime. This was the only way to get power until the centralized utility companies came along. Buying power from a centralized utility company was cheaper and more flexible, but required change. Obviously, companies did abandon the old models and make the change. In the 1930s and 40s, there was almost an entire shift to using centralized utility plants for power. This was an enormous change in business assumptions and strategy. Carr espouses the same thing is now happening in information technology. Arguably, IT is as important to business today as electricity was in the early 1900s. While the technologies are different, they are both general purpose. And if you can find a way to centralize the supply of a general purpose technology and allow it to be shared rather than force companies to invest in individual and proprietary systems, you can save enormous amounts of money and free up enormous capital to allow companies to invest in their core business. Looking back at the history of IT, early on the assumption was companies needed to run their own machinery and software. This was common through the 1960s. This was the prevailing model of the mainframe era where the power of computing was hidden inside the computer. There were clean rooms and teams of people running the data centers. But the problem was the power of the computer could not be fully realized. The machines were generally used for corporate or high-level purposes. Individual end users were still isolated from the true power of the computer. Mainframe utilization as an asset was high, but it came at a cost: lack of simple end user accessibility. With the growth of personal computers, companies began developing internal server rooms. Client server networks enabled the end user to harness the capabilities of computing, which exploded the power of computing. By the 1990s, this was a mirror image of the old mainframe era. On the one hand, computing had become very personal. On the other, there are enormous inefficiencies. Unfortunately, the high utilization of mainframes went away and other inefficiencies were built in as individual companies began developing these high-capacity server rooms. With most server architecture designs, there is wasted processing space, storage capacity, and most importantly, capital. As an example, a recent study by HP found only 20% of corporate servers are utilized versus the 80% of mainframes, and only 35% of network storage capacity is consumed. With in-house proprietary server systems, it is estimated 70% of IT labor costs are driven by routine maintenance activities. If you think about it, if companies are basically doing the same things with IT and spending so much money on maintaining the status quo, IT capabilities quickly become indistinguishable and companies lose their IT competitive advantage. At that point, IT becomes more a cost of doing business rather than a competitive advantage. What can companies do to improve IT utilization and free up capital? The answer: cloud computing. No longer do you need to go to the electronics store to buy software, make sure it is compatible with your operating system, and determine if you have enough memory. This can all be done on the web. The cloud makes it easier to change business models, try new things, and create differentiation. Cloud computing is the new disruptive technology. The question is, will you be a disruptor or one of the disrupted? In my professional world of supply chain execution technology, cloud computing is still discussed, but I continue to see companies favoring on-premise solutions. Even customers shifting to a cloud strategy for their core business applications, for example ERP, continue to implement on-premise for the mission-critical supply chain execution solutions like warehouse management systems. The question is, how or where will cloud computing impact your supply chain operations? Cloud supply chain solutions will continue to grow in strategic importance as companies continue to move substantial volumes of North American and European manufacturing capacity offshore, creating extended supply chains that are more complex and more challenging to manage. As supply chains extend, real-time visibility becomes more critical to management success. And in general, supply chain visibility is best achieved with cloud-based solutions. In the global economy, supply chain management only gets tougher. Despite efforts to build technology that would enable visibility, reliance on the one-to-many connectivity requirements remain a primary difficulty for many. A shipper may need to connect to hundreds or even thousands of trading partners. That's a challenge. Many trading partners are small, unsophisticated companies lacking the capabilities or inclination to be connected. If you can't connect with virtually all of your trading partners, there are holes in the supply chain. This can make the data and reporting suspect and ultimately unusable. Additionally, given the alternative budget impacts cloud computing provides, for example, turning a capital expenditure into an operating expense, and less dependency on skill-specific IT resources, companies using a lean IT strategy may favor the cloud. If cloud is a viable part of your business strategy, which of your applications are best suited for a switch to the cloud? In the October 2013 research report by SCM World, Supply Chain and the Future of Applications, the author suggests companies compare each application on the benefits of collaboration and the network effect against the sensitivity of data sharing or how proprietary is the information used in the application. According to the report, the network effect is maximized for functions best served when a large number of suppliers and/or customers benefit from rapid access to information that can streamline businesses. From a strategic perspective, for supply chains to achieve their upside potential, more efficient means of collaboration, communication, shared risk, and orchestration are needed. The more extended and the more interdependent your supply chain, the more potential for cloud computing benefit. For example, sales and operations planning, collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment, transportation management systems, and store shelf optimization are cloud-friendly solutions and have the greatest potential to deliver the network effect throughout a supply chain. On the other hand, routine execution type solutions, like warehouse management, factory planning, and inventory optimization, are generally less collaboration intensive and tend to fall in the questionable zone between cloud and non-cloud friendly solutions. However, if your company is shifting to a cloud solution IT strategy, there may not be ample IT resources available in-house to support on-premise solutions. Hence, moving these borderline fit solutions to the cloud could be a better overall fit for your operations. I encourage you to check out the book, The Big Switch, to gain a better understanding of the shift to cloud computing. And also review the SCM World Paper, Supply Chain and the Future of Applications, to help you develop a strategy for supply chain solution types to move to the cloud.